الفساد في مرافق الدولة بدرجة خطيرة أساءت إلى سمعة مصر في الداخل والخارج.
Egypt, before 1952, was a constitutional monarchy on paper. Before King Farouk I took power in 1936, Egypt had a constitution that called for a separation of powers. This constitution attempted to reduce the power of the monarch. The inefficient constitution divided power between the monarch and the parliament. It put Egypt on the path to democracy and allowed the people to vote for representatives in parliament, which was supposed to counterbalance the king's power. The young and inexperienced Farouk was 16 when he was proclaimed the king after his father, King Fuad. In his early years on the throne, he was a much-loved ruler. However, his very lavish lifestyle started having a negative impact on his people. King Farouk, as well as his father, did not like the idea of changing to a democracy. His father strategically thought of ways to indirectly change this idea of a democracy back into a monarchy. One way the king tried to increase his power was he always purposely chose the least popular minister from the minority party to be the prime minister, one of the highest positions in the government. Therefore, the king would have the most power since the people disliked the prime minister. The king also continually dissolved parliament and changed the cabinet, creating instability in the Egyptian government. This and similar actions defeated the purpose of the constitution that was recently made. Egyptian democracy regressed several steps. He effectively changed the new democracy back into a monarchy. This then created great political upheaval across Egyptian society. The Egyptian people wanted the military to take over the country because they believed that they would protect it from the rest of the corrupted government. There was a group of 9 officers in the Egyptian military that wanted to change this and voice the people's opinion. They called themselves the Free Officers and successfully took the people's opinions into action. The members of this group were Lieutenant Colonel Gamal Abdel Nasser, Lieutenant Colonel Anwar al-Sadat, Major Abdel Hakim Amir, Major Salah Salim, Major Kamal ad-Din Hussein, Wing Commander Gamal Salim, Squadron Leader Hassan Ibrahim, Major Khalid Muhyiddin, and Wing Commander Abdel Latif al-Baghdadi. There were 2 soldiers that joined later, whose names were Major Hussein al-Shafi'i and Lieutenant Colonel Zakaria Muhyiddin. With Gamal Abdel Nasser leading the revolution, Egypt again started to try to reform the Egyptian government.
I went to the Prime Minister and delivered the ultimatum to him. He was shocked, believe me, because up till this moment he didn't know that we were going to dethrone the king at all. He was shocked and received me like this. I told him yes. He said, are you powerful enough? I told him yes. Go and deliver it to the king. He must leave by 6 o'clock this evening.
Although King Farouk did not want to resign, he was forced to abdicate his crown.
As we took the king to the ship, he said, "You ate me for lunch before I could eat you for dinner."
After the successful coup d'etat, the military took over. This military regime is still in power today. The officers made a group called the Revolutionary Command Council, or the RCC. When the RCC took power, they eliminated aristocratic titles like Basha and Bey. This council then voted for Mohammed Naguib, an honored officer in the past Arab-Israeli war, to become president. They also chose him because he was trusted by the rest of the army. On August 1952, thousands of factory workers went on strike at a textile plant. These workers started to create fires, damage the machines, and pick fights with the police officers. The military was called down to stop the protesting, and many were killed, injured, and put in jail. Some were put in prison because they were accused of being communist. Due to these conflicts, the Communist Party of Egypt called the new powers a military dictatorship. On September 7, 1952, Mohammed Naguib became prime minister after the past prime minister, Ali Meher, resigned. The RCC then started to work to better the country. They started to improve education quality, build more schools, increase the amount of job opportunities, improve agriculture, and change corrupted rules. The RCC banned all political parties and afterwards made Egypt a republic. The Revolutionary Command Council took power in Egypt for 3 transitional years, while developing the new government. After the monarchy was completely abolished, during this transitional period, Mohammed Naguib officially became the president and the prime minister. The others in the RCC became heads of other ministries, and Gamal Abdel Nasser became the Minister of Interior and the Deputy Prime Minister. There was a power struggle between members in the RCC to see who would lead the new government. Due to this, there were many conflicts and disagreements, and Naguib resigned after only 2 years in office. During Naguib's years in office, he gained popularity throughout the Egyptian populace. When he resigned, the people expressed their outrage, and because of this, Naguib was reinstated as the president, although Nasser then became the prime minister. After this, Nasser tried to release Egypt from under British control and resolve conflicts with Sudan. The conflicts with the Sudanese were easier to handle and were to be resolved during a 3-year period. Gamal Abdel Nasser then signed an agreement with Britain that called for all British troops to be pulled out of Egypt. The agreement allowed them to return if there was an attack on Egypt or Turkey. The Muslim Brotherhood vehemently disagreed with this latter point and tried to assassinate Abdel Nasser in Alexandria on October 26, 1954. Since Mohammed Naguib was a Muslim Brotherhood sympathizer, he was blamed for the assassination attempt and was subsequently removed from office 1 month later in November. The Muslim Brotherhood repeatedly tried to become partners with Nasser, as Nasser did not like the Muslim Brotherhood because of their stated independence from the free officers and even banned them once before in February 1954. He refused to work with them. Later, Nasser befriended Yugoslavia and together were not aligned with either the Soviet Union or the West. This way, they could still buy arms from both sides since they were neither an ally nor an enemy. Although Israel was rapidly arming itself, Egypt made no real attempt to catch up and focused more on the development of the country. Because Egypt was starting to exercise their independence, they had many disagreements with Western countries. This, as well as the Suez Canal, was one of the major reasons that led France, Britain, and Israel to attack Egypt. This war was called the Tripartite War, also known as the 1956 War. Their plan was that Israel would attack from the Sinai Peninsula, and Britain and France would start off by attacking Egypt's air force at Israel's request. Nasser could not buy arms from many countries due to his disagreements with them, which made Egypt heavily reliant on the Soviet Union for military arms and equipment. Israel planned to take over the Sinai Peninsula, and France planned to take back the Suez Canal that was once controlled by them. During the initial phase of the war, the Soviet Union threatened to bomb France and Britain if they did not withdraw their forces from Egypt now. Because of this threat, the United States, although not an ally of Egypt at the time, pressured Britain, France, and Israel to withdraw. The US did this because they were angered that Britain and France did not inform them of the attack before it happened. Another reason they did not want Britain and France attacking Egypt was because they did not want the Soviet Union to be the country that was the champion of peace. On December 22, 1956, 1 month after the start of hostilities, Britain and France completely withdrew from Egypt and did not participate in the war any longer. Israel withdrew their forces much later than the British and French. Neither Israel nor Britain and France fulfilled their main missions. After this withdrawal, Egypt was considered victorious. The result of this war was that Nasser had completely driven out all of the British and French from Egypt. Also, Egypt had completely taken over the Suez Canal and the Sinai Peninsula. This made Nasser a great hero in the eyes of the Egyptians and all Arabs. Egypt agreed to allow United Nations troops to be stationed in the Sinai Peninsula to sustain the peace between Egypt and Israel. Later, Nasser told the United Nations troops to withdraw from Sinai when the Soviet Union falsely informed him that Israel planned to attack Syria. In response, he stationed Egyptian troops in Sinai. Nasser then opened the Suez Canal and let all ships go through except for the Israeli ships and closed the Straits of Tiran to Israeli shipping. This then led to a war in 1967 and was called the Arab-Israeli War, or the Six-Day War. Not only did Egypt lose this war, but it was greatly humiliated by it. Israel now occupied the Sinai Peninsula. The following Egyptian presidents then followed the new and improved rules and government made by the RCC. The RCC was extremely important in Egyptian history and changed the future of the country. Egypt gained popularity from the great achievements of Nasser and the free officers for their country all over the world.